Welcome back. You're watching Political Exchange. The Cabinet on Wednesday cleared strategic divestment in 5 PSUs, including a majority stake in BPCL, Shipping Corporation of India, and a 31% stake in Container Corporation of India. The government is expecting to raise 78,400 crores through the sale, which would bring it closer to its disinvestment target. The opposition has called it a scam. There were protests in Parliament today. Congress says this amounts to selling the country, and TMC wants the Prime Minister to call an all-party meeting to discuss why this disinvestment was actually necessary. Let's get your reactions from the Congress party now.
The initiative taken by this government for divesting the PSU clearly substantiates the argument made by our party. Government has been undergoing severe financial strain, and in order to come out from the cobweb of financial stress and strain, they thought it prudent to sell the silver coin stored in our country. Silver coins means our PSUs.
His government is selling entire country. That's what seems to be good. All the oil companies, those who are in the profit also, they are selling. What is the justification from the government? Once they are telling we are nationalist party, one they are telling make in India. On the other hand, they are selling the very, very Maharatna companies of India and most profitable also. Prestigious companies of India, they are selling. There is no justification.
All right, so that was K.C. Venugopal, the General Secretary of the Congress Party. We still have Sanjay Jha of the Congress with us, Gopal Krishna Agarwal of the BJP, Manisha Priyam, political analyst. Also joining us on the show is Fawad Aleem, leader of the CPI. And Fawad Aleem, our first question to you. As you as a member of the opposition, are you also questioning this disinvestment move by the Narendra Modi government?
Well, it's very clear from the steps taken by this government, especially in the background of the revenue shortfall, that the government is in desperation mode. The government has not acknowledged its failure in terms of the demonetization. It is not accepting its failure in actually implementing GST, which is why the revenues have fallen. And now they are selling off the government assets that are, the true ownership lies with the people of India, because it was built and established with the money that was paid by the common man of India, and they are going to sell that and harvest revenues to actually cover their shortcomings. And what is even more unfortunate, in fact, it's kudos to your TV channel that you are at least discussing this. The government does not want to discuss its policy perspective, because it is shrouding its entire policy perspective behind what you call issues that are actually not related to governance. So I think so. This is a three-layered approach taken up by the Narendra Modi government. If one has to question Narendra Modi, it has to question Narendra Modi at three levels. The first level is that why is it not discussing policy issues in the forums where policy issues should be discussed, especially in Parliament, taking the opinion of people who have been elected by the common man when the government is choosing to sell assets that belong to the common man. The second level is that why does the government require this revenue at this point of time? They are already borrowing, transferring reserves from the Reserve Bank of India. They are what you call in a revenue shortfall situation.
Okay.
So what are the reasons? Demonetization, GST has to be evaluated by the government. And the third is that why is the government running away from a public discourse on its failures? Abject failure in terms of governance.
Okay. All right, Fawad, I'll request you to hold on. But the fact is, previous governments have also set disinvestment targets. In fact, P. Chidambaram was also in favor of it. And very recently, when he was questioned, he seemed to be backing the government, at least on this issue. And I'd like to go across to Sanjay Jha on this. Sanjay, in September 2012, there was financial stress as well. The fiscal deficit was an issue. And P. Chidambaram had set a 30,000 crore disinvestment target. In fact, recently he has been quoted and saying that government owning and managing PSUs locks up wealth, which would get unlocked and privatized and eventually listed. P. Chidambaram also said that government has a right to be in business only in areas where there is a need for the government to be in business, where some public good has to be produced in government-owned factories or companies. So what would you say about the government's move? Your party is questioning it, but there is your own leader, P. Chidambaram, somebody who has led the finance ministry, who seems to back this move.
Parikshit, I'll tell you why the party and Mr. Chidambaram are fairly consistent here. There's no contradiction. Point number one, the reason why we are in this current economic catastrophe is largely because the GDP growth has totally collapsed. And as you know, when that happens, your revenue targets, whether it's both direct and indirect taxes, tend to be far lower than whatever has been estimated. Therefore, this government's fiscal deficit is likely to cross much higher numbers than what has been budgeted. And as you already know, even the CAG has pointed out that the off-budget financing has actually maybe crossed even 6%. Now, this is a desperate measure. Now, whenever you do divestment, you need to do it, well, you're not just looking at market conditions, but you need to do it when you're not pushed against the wall. Now, I'll give you one example. Now, my first job was with a company called Bharat Petroleum. Now, I read the statement made by the finance ministry that they're selling Bharat Petroleum. Now, ask yourself this question. Bharat Petroleum remains, as we talk, one of the most professionally managed oil companies in this country. It's a former Shell, which was nationalized. Now, oil happens to be a very strategic commodity. The reason why I mentioned this, Parikshit, is because if you look at oil all over the world, around 80% of oil companies are state-owned globally. The reason is it's a very strategic commodity. At times of war, extreme shortages, you don't want to be held, vulnerable to a multinational company or to a private enterprise which is more obsessed with shareholder value creation. Now, the way they're looking at BPCL is very, very disconcerting. I'll give you one reason. Last quarter, it did better than the Indian Oil Corporation. That's how big it is. And its size is much smaller than Indian Oil. So if you're going to just sell BPCL because, it's a cash cow, it is basically a manifestation of high degree of what I call as, myopic view on the divestment itself. Nobody says that you don't identify certain public sector units that will probably benefit from private sector investment and management control. But when you have companies that are doing well in the public sector, you need to do these in a very strategic sense. You got to look at the commodity, the markets, and probably stagger it over a longer period of time. I think we have reason to worry at this point.
You're saying that Congress has reason to worry and there is reason to question the government on this. Manisha Priyam, to get you in, you heard Nirmala Sitharaman yesterday after the cabinet meeting. She explained the government's rationale. She explained the entire reasoning behind strategic sale in these 5 PSUs. What do you feel about the government's move? Do you think these protests that we're seeing in Parliament today and that we'll see in the next few days are justified?
No, I mean, it is the job of the opposition to raise issues that they don't agree with. But as far as the Congress party is concerned, philosophically, they don't differ from this pathway. Liberalization or sale of PSUs has been a process that has been started by the Congress party. Their leaders, beginning from P.V. Narasimha Rao, whom the Congress party doesn't want to own up very much, to Manmohan Singh, have been the architects of liberalization and also of sale of PSUs. So for the Congress party to today say that this one's not good and that one's, maybe there is some process to it. As Sanjay Jha said, this asset very well managed, this should not have been the block. Probably those that are non-performing assets should have been on the block. So the difference really then only is in the time of what, when and how much. It's in the sequencing. It's not really in the philosophy of the sale. So as far as India is concerned now, the whole approach now is that public sector undertakings are passé. They are not the undertakings that are seen as strategic assets any longer. Which ones the government decides to sell, and clearly this government at this point of time needs to manage the fisc. It is indeed in a very tight situation, whether it owns up what it did on demonetization or not. But there are few avenues left before the government. As you are aware, it has had to go to the Reserve Bank, and the Reserve Bank has complied with giving the government the money that this government required. So there are fewer ways of the government to mobilize revenues. Sale of PSUs is definitely one of those things that it needs to do. So I would say things like Air India are more difficult but need to be done sooner than later. What's the need of carrying on now with a behemoth that they're not able to manage? So there can be differences in terms of what you're going to sell, when you're going to sell it, but beyond that, the philosophy, clearly the Congress and the BJP more or less in agreement with what needs to be done with respect to the PSUs.
All right, Manisha Priyam, Sanjay Jha, Gopal Agarwal, Fawad Halim, thank you very much for joining us here on Political Exchange. This is an issue that will keep boiling in Parliament over the next few days. Go ahead, final comments. Right, go ahead, final comments.
The issue is that if you do not disinvest, it was given in the budget, the figure of 1,05,000 crore from disinvestment target was given in the budget. So if the government is taking this step, it is well in the Parliament domain and the government domain. Second thing is, if you don't do it at the right time, then you end up like Air India, 60,000 crores of debt. And this was the way Congress corruption and the fleecing of PSU and national wealth was being taken place. The way BSNL, MTNL, all these companies have become such a problem because they were not managed rightly. And if you diversify, open up the holding, it unlocks value. So, there is a strategic also alignment. NEEPCO is being sold to NTPC. So, there is a capital requirement for NEEPCO projects. If it is aligned with NTPC, which has surplus money, this will have a strategic integration and the economy will flourish. So, these are strategic decisions are well within the government domain and are in the best interest and at the right time. Otherwise, you just want to fleece.
Gopal, we've run out of time completely. I'll have to stop you here. I think this panel understands the philosophy behind disinvestments, but they are questioning the entities where disinvestment is taking place. And probably this is what you'll have to explain in the Parliament in the days to come. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on Political Exchange.